Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Figure Forecast podcast with your host, Scarlett, and my lovely co host, Maeve. We are back with season three. Obviously, we did our little intro last episode, and we're going to get stuck back in. Just the two of us today again. And we want to kind of run through if you are ready to compete or when you are ready to compete, because obviously it is coming up to the start of the next season of competing, and a lot of first timers will be getting ready for their shows, or even people thinking about doing their first off season to get into competing for the first time. So we just want to go through some little things to think about when it comes to competing, or if you're wanting to start your competitive journey. And yeah, just maybe some things to bear in mind from our own experiences.
Yeah, or even people thinking who've done a few shows, like should they compete again this year? I think it's always important to just keep these little pointers in the back of your mind. There's a lot of things to consider, and I suppose particularly for the newbies or maybe first time competitors, I think a big thing to look at first and foremost is what your current body composition is like. And that's not are you lean, it's do you actually have enough muscle tissue there to get on stage? Because I'm assuming most people listening to this are going to be aiming for the figure class. So you're not just going in, to a bikini class where there's maybe a less muscular shape. You are going into a category that requires quite a bit of well developed muscle, a very specific X frame shape. And, if you haven't spent enough time out of a diet, really committing to that growth and developing that physique, you're just, you're wasting so much time in a prep that could be spent growing and actually getting you to a point where you're actually ready to prep and kind of go through that whole diet phase and unveil the magic that only happens in an off season. And so many people just don't give that enough time, I think.
I think as well, because when you are first getting into it, and like, you probably, when you're hitting poses and you've got a little bit more like body fat, and yeah, you might feel a little bit more of a pump, and you feel like you've got a lot more muscle under there. Like, unless you have actually dieted down before and you've seen yourself lean,
Mm.
a lot of the time you probably will have less muscle than you think, because from my own experience, when I first did my first bigger prep and I dieted down for the first time getting that lean, like I had literally no upper body and I thought I was wow.
Sure, I thought I had glutes last prep and then I dieted and I was like, oh. So, yeah, I think that's actually a really good point about if you've not dieted down to that level before. Like, it's all right and good. Most of us have gone through, an 8, 12 week diet or whatever. But I think if you're someone who has never really got into true condition before and even completed something like a photo shoot prep to just see, like, because you don't know what's under there until you do diet. And it would be absolutely pointless to go through a whole entire prep only to end up really disappointed at the end of it. So I definitely consider doing like a mock prep or just getting into really good nick for a shoot or something. If you've never gone through that process, for
Yeah, I
sure.
think I think like the shoots are a really good way to see if you like it, because you've still got that kind of end goal. You can still practice your poses and get into the swing of it. It's obviously a little bit less pressure than getting on stage and feeling like, you need to go out and win things, but it's also gives you that like time frame to count down to and be really like on it and committed to it, and then see what you look like, because I'm sure we're going to get into costs of competing at some point, but there's also that to bear in
Yeah,
mind. Like,
yeah.
you know, if you do all that time and you put all that money into it, and then you get to the end and you haven't really got that much muscle tissue, you're probably going to be like, oh man.
Well, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that actually kind of leads us on to if you're no like if you're brand new to this whole world versus if you've been living this lifestyle, eating really well, sticking to your meal plan or your macros, training at a high intensity, lifting heavy, like, have you been doing that for long enough? Like, have you actually been living that kind of lifestyle for long enough? Or is a prep going to upend your whole entire world and, expect you to do all of these new behaviors and form all of these new habits and routines that's going to put a massive amount of stress and overwhelm on you. I know for me, when I was starting my competing journey, I kind of got to a point where it was just my lifestyle. Like, I was training, I love training hard, I was eating well, I understood nutrition and I understood training. And I think that for me, I wasn't going out drinking every weekend. Like, I wasn't drinking. I was, more invested in my health and performance and results. And I think if you're not yet there and you're doing it for other reasons, like to look good or to upload an Instagram photo, or, because everybody else is doing it, or someone said to you in the gym, oh, you should compete, or planted the seed. I think you need to kind of naturally get to that level, like, and get to that mindset where, yeah, okay, I'm actually ready to take that next step and like level up and ready for a new challenge. And you just have enough of the foundations and the basics there. I think that's probably overlooked a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I do agree with kind of, if you've spent that amount of time, like maybe, half a year or up to a year, like already building them foundations in like not necessarily like a massive off-season setting, but like, you've built them foundations in place already. Like, I do think pushing yourself and getting up on stage, if it is something that you want to do, just to see if you do like it as well, like, and seeing, what you have got then to work on for the next one. But I think that'll obviously like tie in a little bit with like your expectations of your first package as well, because I think, it's very easy for even like us, like looking at pros and being like when I
Why,
step on
why
stage,
are
I
my
want to look like
hamsters like
that. Like,
that?
yeah, exactly. Like in like reality, like that takes years and years of like competing like season to season, having long off seasons, and getting dense muscle mass to look like that. Like, that doesn't happen over a couple of years. Like, so it's like having that expectation of, you know, probably what you're going to bring, unless you've obviously got some background of, you know,
Yeah.
muscle. Like you're
Yeah, like if
bringing,
you're someone who has genuinely been training for years and you're maybe, your late 20s kind of thing, not like 20-year-old new-ish to the gym, by lifting on your own kind of time for 10 years, of course you're going to have developed some kind of like shape and muscle density and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the expectations one is big, because a lot of people can listen to a lot of outside noise as well. And, like, your family are going to tell you look great because you do to them. You do for someone who has never done this before and never looked like that before. Of course, you look absolutely fucking phenomenal. Like, I loved to see my body change in that first prep. And I just couldn't believe it because I'd just never been in that great shape before, like ever. And like, I'm still super proud of it. But when I look at the pictures, I'm like, oh, like I wasn't near stage ready. And
yeah,
but I was so thrilled at the time because I've never seen myself in that light, but I just was not where I needed to be. So I think, yeah, managing those expectations and knowing it's okay not to place like in your first show, or that kind of stuff. And I think people can really set themselves up for a massive downer afterwards sometimes, when they
yeah,
set that bar so high and they expect themselves to perform at that level against people who are seasoned athletes. It's of course you're going to be disappointed. You need to go in with no expectations and just all of the hopes.
yeah. And as well, like if you think about it, like it might be the first time you've ever stood next to somebody else ever,
Yeah.
within the class, because it's all well and good looking at people on Instagram or, seeing people in the gym, but until you've actually stood next to someone, like you
Mhm.
can look completely different. Like, some people are, especially like if you're shorter and, you look like big, like massive, like when you stand next to someone who's actually like tall, like you, for instance, and got like loads of muscle, it's like the comparison is
Yeah.
totally different again. So it's
Yeah.
that to bear in mind as well. Like if it's the first time, going up against other people,
Yeah.
because you've got to take that with a pinch of salt, because that is the game.
That is the game. And like any of the fellow tall gals out there, you might think you look great in your driveway and your check-in photos. I'm like, I loved how I looked in my prep, but when I got to nationals and I was on a pro qualifier stage against these athletes who had been doing figure for years, I wanted to walk off stage because I was
Yeah.
just like, I'm so far away from what I need to be. So the element of comparison is important, not to let it ruin your prep, but you also need to be ready for, you are being
Yeah.
compared to these people and you are being judged against them. That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Simple as. Simple as. And that's another thing, when you're being judged against people and managing expectations, I think your not only your category but also your federation is going to come into it a lot. Like, number one, where what is your goal? Like, what do you really want to look like? What do you actually want to achieve? Like, is it pro status? Is it working towards the Olympia, like everyone's dream? Or, is it, I just want to do this for a challenge? And, are you maybe better looking at some of the natural federations? Because if you are going into something like NPC, IFBB, PCA, you can be damn sure a figure competitor standing next to you is absolutely assisted. So you need to take that into consideration. Number one, is that something you're willing to do? Like, is it something you want to do to your body? Is it something you can afford to do? Is it something that you're going to get frustrated about when you're standing next to this jacked bitch and you're not? And, I think that it does need to be considered, like, big time.
Yeah.
Big
Because
time.
I think as well, when you get to like you say, like the pro qualifiers and
Yeah.
them kind of international shows where people are coming from all over the place to obviously win their pro status, like they are people who are in it for that professional status level, and they are willing to do what it takes to do that. So it's like, if you're someone who's new or just getting started to doing it, and you do enter these comps as well, because you can. I did a pro qualifier in my first first year.
Yeah.
But like it's that kind of expectation of like,
Yeah.
are you doing what they're doing? Have you been
Yeah.
doing it for as long as they have been doing it? And when you kind of put that in a context, you can be like, right, okay, so that's why I don't look as big and
Yeah.
as vascular as
That is
them.
exactly it. That is exactly it. So I think that's not maybe a little bit of a moral decision you have to make, or like
Mm,
not an ethical one, but like just one you have to be okay with making, really, because there's no going back when you do it. Like, you've cut yourself off from any hope of ever doing a natural federation. So if you are someone competing for the first time and you're maybe not, this is someone who's been training for years, I would really urge you to max out your natural
yeah.
potential before
There's
exploring.
so
Yeah,
many good natural shows as well. Like, I don't feel like, you don't have to go down that route. Like there's so many
yeah,
natural,
yeah,
like really fucking mint natural athletes as well. Do you know what I mean? I think just because it is a figure class doesn't mean that you have to push to go down that route. Just for the sake of competing.
yeah.
Um,
Even two
you
bros
know,
do like natural
yeah,
natural
yeah,
stuff, which is fab. So you can still compete within the IFBB, but know that if you are going to a pro qualifier, you are going to be against the girls that are assisted. So if you are considering any of the more muscular classes, that just has to be a conscientious kind of consideration that you are making. That's all we say on that one, but we will definitely touch on PEDs again on this um, season, because I know that was a big kind of hit last time and people were very, very
yeah,
interested in it. And of course, we are there to bring you all of the information. Um, and with that comes costs.
yeah.
Costs of competing. It's no joke. No
No.
joke. Like,
Well, where do we even start?
where do we? Yeah, let's start at the obvious ones. Your bikini, that's going to cost about $500, or a couple of €100, for a standard enough one. Like, if you're going all out, like, you could be paying up to $1,000, and that's not exaggerating. If you go and you want some like mad WBFF kind of creation with all of the sparkles and all of the detail, you are going to pay for it. So get saving or get a very good fucking credit card. There's the
Yeah.
shoes, there's the posing, there's the hair, the makeup, the tan. I shit you not, I paid $250 for pro tan at the pro qualifier. Like that is the level of cost that you are dealing with. It's not a
And it's
normal go. Yeah,
about 70, 75 pound per show here in the UK as well. So in, if you do 3 shows in your season, that's like,
yeah.
you got to get a
And
tan every time.
yeah. And then you have your registration cost. That's about
Yeah.
$250 per show over here. I'm not sure what it's like in the UK.
But
Probably
yeah, I think it's about
$100 or
100.
£100 or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. And then you have your coaching because I can guarantee if it's your first show, you're not prepping yourself. So that's a couple of £100 or dollars every month.
Yeah.
You have your supplements because you're obviously going to be looking after your health, vitamins, like proteins, pre-workouts, all of that kind of stuff. And then if you are going the assisted route, that obviously costs money. So that's an extra thing. What else? Posing lessons, like you
Yeah.
absolutely need them because no one is.
Entry.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's
And
like 200 quid for a show, for a show.
per show, and then you have to pay if you need to do another category. Like if
Class.
you want to do
Yeah.
like open and novice and beginner,
Beginners.
you're
Yeah.
paying 3 times. Um, Jesus. Your food, like you're going to be buying a lot of food and probably different food that may be a little bit more expensive than you're eating in your off season because it's less readily available. You know, you might be buying like special cereal and like gluten free stuff and all of that kind of jazz. Um, what else?
Travel.
Travel, yeah. Like if you're doing a local show, great, you can drive, but I know for me, there's one local show I can do. It's the Perth, and that's it. So no matter what, I have to travel. And like in the UK, like you've so many to choose from.
Yeah.
Like you could do one every weekend in a different city, like realistically, couldn't you? So that's
Yeah.
another thing. If you want to go international, you're then paying for flights, you're paying for accommodation, maybe car rental. Like
Yeah.
the list goes on.
I know. I
It's
know.
nonstop,
And that's all whilst you're dragging your ass.
right? So it's
Spending
definitely.
money.
Yeah, it's definitely not something to do if you are maybe not not in a good financial spot because it's not going to get better on prep. Your bank balance goes way down, way down.
It's weird
Um,
though, because you actually like you can't go out and do things like, so you can't like, go on a night out or go to like a restaurant, or you'd think you'd save money when you're in prep, but you just end up buying like random shit because you can't do stuff. Like I would literally go to the supermarket and be like, oh, I think I'll get this like weird coffee cup or something, and like you just end up like buying stuff. Like I swear, like
that's
ask
so true.
anybody, like,
That's so true. I don't know how many water bottles I bought
yeah,
through prep. That's cute. That's big. I need that. That's so funny. And
yeah,
actually, clothes. You're going to need to buy a
yeah,
whole new wardrobe like by the end of prep. Now mostly it's just going to be gym gear, and they're just going to go into a box until the next time you're that tiny. But your clothes aren't going to fit at the end of a 20, 30 week prep. You're going to be a couple of sizes smaller. So
yeah.
that's another thing. It's a costly hobby. I genuinely think my last season cost me about $12,000, $10,000 or $12,000.
Yeah, I don't even want to look. I
It,
haven't put it together,
or like ignorance
but
genuinely wants
I'm
it.
still getting over it now.
Oh, still like, oh God. So yeah, definitely something that really does need to be carefully considered and not just done on a whim because you're just gonna bury yourself in bills and debt if you do dive in head first and kind of worry about it later. It's not a YOLO thing.
No.
No.
And I think as well, like another thing to touch on, like not just for first timers, but maybe for like people who have been doing it like longer, like sort of deciding whether or not to do season to season or to take like a longer time out, because I know obviously I've done that and you doing that now, like that decision of like, will you have made enough
Yeah.
of a difference to then go back
Yeah.
into a prep, or if your body is even ready for you to go back into a prep? Because if you think you've done like a 30 35-week prep, and then you only have like you only have like 6-7 months off, and then you go and ask your body to then not only try and pack on muscle that you need to, but then start to go back into a diet again. Like, are you actually giving yourself enough chance to regulate, get back to it, and then be responsive? Because
Yeah,
especially as females,
yeah, yeah. Your
takes a
hormones
while.
take a while. So that, like, those good 8 weeks post show are not counted in your off season. They don't count. You will not make progress. That's really just about establishing, optimal health again and trying to balance out hormones. And in a lot of cases, it can take longer. Like, it really depends on how badly you're affected. Maybe you lost your cycle. That could take a few months to come back. Do not dare prepping until it does. Yeah, it just really depends on the individual, and maybe how harsh the diet was, the length of the diet, like the amount of metabolic adaptation. And I think going season to season to season is fine when you're at a level that allows you to do that and you've spent time, as we said, building. But out from that, you're placing so much stress on your body and
Yeah.
yourself, and you're going to just keep getting frustrated because you actually haven't made the improvements and made the progress. So you're just going to be in that vicious cycle. And you see these people, like, every year, like every season, you see these people who've been told to take 2 or 3 seasons off, like, go grow, and they just keep coming back and keep coming back, and
Yeah,
they
and they
don't get
look
it.
the same.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and another thing, and definitely relevant to last week's chat, is, are you mentally stable enough to withstand 5 to 6 months of a prep? Because prep brain is real, and, like, those last few weeks are rough. Like, they are very, very mentally tough, mentally draining, emotionally draining. Your hormones are so all over the place. Like, you would cry at the drop of a hat. Like, if you spilt your milk on the counter, you can be damn sure there's tears. Like, so are you in a good headspace? And I think not enough people ask themselves that. Like, if you had have asked me,
No,
was I ready to prep last month? Absolutely not. I was off the fucking
no.
cards. Like, so I know for me, the next few months, yeah, is about growing, but it's also working on my headspace to make sure I'm in a really good place to actually be able to stand a prep, because you will do so much damage if your head is already messy.
Well, I think, like, as well, that's one of the reasons that I like pulled out from doing any more shows as well, because my head was in a shit place
Yeah.
through like other situations that were going on at the same time. And I think I was just super stubborn to just get on stage for at
Yeah.
least one time. um, and then and then, you know, like pulled it from there, because I think if I had a continued to push it, then the fallout from post show would have been horrendous, you know. So you got to kind of think about that as well, because when the shows are finished and you're done, if you're not in a good place, that's going to be amplified tenfold. Like,
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be, it's oh, Jesus, it's gonna be rough. And I think with that, you need to make sure you are working with a coach who can support you in that regard, like, who gets you, who, really understands you, and that you can trust and be completely honest with. Because, like, suffering in silence post show is not the way to go. You need to work with someone who you can communicate how you're feeling with, and ask them when you need help. Because there are some awful coaches out there, like, absolutely terrible. You hear all of these stories all of the time, and it's so annoying knowing that's going on. It's awful that they're doing this amount of harm to people and nothing happens, but it does keep happening. So I think
yeah,
it's on you. It is your responsibility to choose wisely and seek someone who you have full faith in.
yeah, 100%. This isn't to put anybody off competing, because obviously we love it.
We love it, but sure, there's something seriously wrong with us. Nah, we love it, but it's hard. I would never tell anybody it's an easy thing. Like, I love it. I love the challenge. I love the process. I love changing my body. I love, just improving and progressing, and I just love it. But it's hard as fuck. Like, it's really difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is such a peculiar sport when you sort of pull back.
When you say it out loud, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all of the points we think people need to consider if you are thinking about competing this year. Just listen to this again
Yeah,
and
yeah,
write down like as you go what you think about the certain topics, because they really do come into it a lot, and you want to have a smooth prep. No, a prep isn't going to be easy, but you want it to be smooth as possible. And if you make sure all of those things are in place, you're setting yourself up for win. You're not setting yourself up to lose, right?
yeah. I think giving yourself enough of a chance before you start a prep to, make sure you've got food in a good place, you're well established with your training, you've got a good coach, like you have that all set in place before you then go.
Yeah,
And just understand, like, you're like, obviously if you've dieted before, you kind of know what it might feel like, and what you might look like um as you come down. Because I mean, obviously the first time you do get lean, it is gonna be a wild experience. And I think you never unsee that once
yeah.
you've been super lean. But yeah, just make sure that you've got yourself prepared for the ride.
It's a fucking roller coaster, baby. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up at that this week, guys. We think you are going to really enjoy this episode. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode, and we have our first guest appearing on next week's episode. So that is super exciting. Yeah, someone we're really excited to chat to.
Yeah, I
And
think it'll tie quite well in with the following on this episode as well.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Someone we're really pumped to have on. So thank you so much for listening again and supporting us through season 3. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, positive reviews, share on socials, all that jazz, and help us grow the figure community. We will chat to you next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.